Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to shoot a review of this, which is the Neopixel to Tri Cree adapter from Warsabers and Saberbay. Now I picked this up on Saberbay's Etsy shop. You can find it on Warsabers online shop. You can find it around on a few different places, but it sells out relatively quickly. So if you're in the market for one, you got to keep an eye out and grab one when you see it. But first off, let me talk about what this is and why you might want one, and then I'll talk about this one specifically because this is the second Tri Cree or Neopixel to Tri Cree adapter that I have reviewed. The other was the Pach Store one, which is a rather different creature. So first off, let's talk about what this is and why you might want one. So when you're buying a lightsaber, you got two different options for setup. You've got baselit, which uses a Tri Cree setup kind of like this with 3 LEDs. Some of them use 4 and have a white one as well, or a quad core in the middle, or just a single LED. But in all cases, you're dealing with a high-powered LED that shines a light up a hollow tube. The other option is Neopixel. Now in Neopixel, you're dealing with a blade like this, where all the lights are inside the blade, and it's not going to do anything if you don't have a blade in it because the light comes from the blade. Alright, the advantage of Neopixel, as I've covered in videos before, but I'll cover it here briefly, you can do scrolling effects, like watching the light coming out and then retracting back in. You can do animations like rainbows or unstable blades or rain blades, that sort of thing. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with the Neopixel. The downside of the Neopixel, in terms of performance, is that it is this white tube, and the animations and everything, that's what you can do. That's what you can customize and play around with. But when you're dealing with just the saber and it's off position, you're still locked into this white tube. All right. Now, the alternative to that is vanity blades. So this is a flat acrylic vanity blade from Ripper Blades right here, but there's no Neopixel in that. You can get one with Neopixel, but it's expensive and they're really hard to come by. Okay, or vanity dueling blades like this, which is a Ripper Blades black unstable blade. Now this is designed to be dueled with, but again, it is a hollow blade. I could get this with a Neopixel install, but then it would only be Neopixel. Or even if you just want to pop in a photon blade or a day blade out at an event. You don't want your saber on, but you still want it to be red, you can pop in a day blade. Right, and then you can turn it on if you want if you have the option to. So the reason that there's an adapter like this is to take a saber that's set up to be able to run all the cool animations on a Neopixel blade and say, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I want to run something like a vanity blade for now. So you pop in an adapter, and it turns the Neopixel signal into a Tri Cree light. All right, now I've had people in my videos in past ask, is there anything that goes the other way? No, there's nothing that goes the other way. There's no way that I know of that you can make something that would be cost-effective and not ungainly, that would read a light wave and transmit it into a Neopixel signal. I'm sure that it's probably possible, but it would be really complicated and nothing that you're ever going to see hit market. So no, you can't go the other way. But you can, if you buy a Neopixel blade, go to Tri Cree. It's kind of like when they changed the records. And the older record players would only play the older records, but newer record players would play newer, older records. Same thing with Blu-ray players. Blu-ray players will play DVDs, but DVD players won't play Blu-rays. So it's the same thing. You can be backwards compatible to the older technology, but not forwards compatible. So something like this is a good reason to get a Neopixel setup because you have the option with something like this to do both. All right. So just a little bit about this specific one. So the Warsabers one, where this one sets itself apart from the only other version that I know of, which is the Pach Store, is a couple places. For one, this one uses a more standard plector pixel pad connector. All right, so if you look at the bottom of most of the Neopixel blades you're going to find on the market, you're going to see that connector is the same. Now these connectors are interchangeable. You can use this on a Pach Store saber or an LGT saber just fine, but it's made and it's designed for that plector pixel. All right, the Neopixel connector on a lot of the blades that you'll get on like AliExpress or from LGT look more like this. Okay, these are interchangeable, so that's just a cosmetic difference. There's really nothing functional about these. The biggest functional difference is that this one is resisted. Now what that means, for one, is that it's heavier and it's bigger, right? This is designed to fit inside a blade so that only this little bit right here gets added to the blade length. This is also designed to fit inside a blade, but it adds substantially more to the blade length, about twice as much. Okay, it's also heavier, so if weight is a big issue, this is going to tilt the weight a little bit. But again, it's a couple of it's an ounce or two, so it's not that big of a deal. But larger blade or larger socket profile and more weight. Now the socket profile doesn't really matter unless you're dealing with something like, well, here's a Electrum Sabercraft saber. Now you can see that the socket on this, the blade goes down to right here, and you can actually see where the blade joins the Neopixel connector. All right, if I try to use an adapter, rather, in here, you got adapter to there, and your blade is going to stick out. All right, so make certain that you have a saber that's got the socket depth that you can use an adapter like this, because if it's a thin, or if it's a small socket depth, like a lot of the things from Vader's Vault, especially the smaller models, or an Electrum Sabercraft, adding that extra profile or that extra length is going to be a problem. All right, the thing about the protection, though, the reason that it might be worth it, when you're dealing with Neopixel setups, there is a resistor that's on the data line that basically is designed to stop extra data from going through, or stop like sort of phantom flashes or stuff like that, basically like scrap data. Right? Most of the time, most manufacturers put that in the blade. Now some sabersmiths put it on the saber side as well. Electrum Sabercraft does, I believe. So some sabersmiths put it on the saber side. Almost everybody puts it on the blade. This right here, the one from Pach Store, does not have a resistor. So what that means is if you have a saber that doesn't have it blade side, like for instance this Bendu Armory.
I am training so that if danger should strike, my body and my reflexes will be prepared.
Okay, so this Bendu Armory setup right here, if I put this Pach Store one in, I get phantom flashes, even when the saber is just in standby. It's not even on. Second it makes connection with those pins, I get flashes. All right, now when I turn it on, it works just fine. Okay. The protected one, or the resisted one rather, I do not get those flashes. All right. And it still works fine when it comes on. So it's a little bit less disconcerting because it's protected. I think that also makes it a little bit safer and less likely to burn out. The other thing about it, though, is it makes it a little bit less compatible. The Electrum Sabercraft saber that I've got here, if I put one of these unprotected ones in here, let's pop a blade in. The blade sticks out, as I mentioned earlier, but if I put one of those unprotected ones in here and fire this up, it works. It's a little bit unpredictable, it's flashy, and it doesn't always know what to do with white, but it does work. Okay. I popped the one from Saberbay, or Warsabers, in here. No signal at all. Alright, so if you're going to use an adapter with Electrum Sabercrafts, the only one that works is the Pach Store one, and it works not very well, but it does kind of work. Either of them work with most Proffie setups, most CFX setups, though if it's an unprotected CFX setup or an unresisted CFX setup, this one's going to have some of those flashes. But most of them work with most sabers, but there are some exceptions, like an Electrum Sabercraft. The Warsabers won't work, the Pach Store one will. All right, this is a 3D printed casing on an LGT budget Neopixel setup here. And
I'm Cal Kestis.
there's one. That's the Warsabers. Here's the Pach Store. All right, that crackle that you heard on that's something about this specific core. I'll talk about that when I actually review this this setup here. But suffice to say, under most Sabers, LGT Sabers, Pach Store Sabers, Proffie Sabers, most CFX Sabers, these things are going to work, or either of these things are going to work fine, though this one is a little bit safer and a little bit more reliable perhaps because it doesn't have those phantom flashes. For something that's a little bit more picky, like an Electrum Sabercraft, this is a little bit more versatile, works in more sabers, and has a lower profile and a lower weight. All right, so it's nice that I finally have one of these that I can pop into my Bendu Armory and use without having to worry about those phantom flashes and be afraid that it might fry the board or anything like that. I don't know for certain if it will, but when I see things happen, or when I see things functioning in ways they're not supposed to, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking to me. So I feel safer using this in my Electrum Sabercraft, so it's good that it's out there. All right, hopefully this has been a review that has been of use to you, to show you this and talk about Neopixel to Tri Cree adapters. If this has been something that you've liked, join me back for more videos, and I'll see you next time.